Hey there everyone, this is Ill Factor from beatacademy.com, and in this video I'm going to share with you some music production tips while recreating the beat in Post Malone's Better Now. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So let's focus our attention over to the drums. Let's take a look at the pattern. Now what we're going to do is add a little bit of sound design to these drums. Some subtle changes that we'll add, but will make a big difference and impact, especially when producing music in this vein. So let's start over with the hi-hats. So we have two separate hi-hats here. We've got hi-hat 1, in which I've created a 8th note pattern that we're playing in the grid. And then we have another hi-hat here that has an arpeggiator instrument on there. So just by playing that one note, it's already set to adding a 30-second note arpeggiator. So let me walk you through that first. So here we have two different hi-hat samples. And on this sample, we have an arpeggiator. And I simply went to my MIDI effects folder, grabbed an arpeggiator, and drag and drop that onto my instrument. And once I've done that, I can set the arpeggiator to any rate. So if I wanted that note to repeat for every 8th note, I'd set the rate at 8th note and play the sample. That means I literally only have to draw in one note instead of actually having to write out the 8th note pattern. So we go back to the clips grid, we can see that I've got one note here to represent a 30-second arpeggiated note. And then we also have the other hi-hat playing an 8-note pattern. So why didn't I just create an arpeggiator for this hi-hat and use an 8th note and just draw in one long note? Well, that would come to mind, but the reason why I have the 8th note on the top drawn out is because I want to do something a little bit different with the velocity, and I want to show you how I do that. So here what we're going to do is just go ahead and eliminate this row. And what we're going to do is just draw one note, and let's set our grid to every 8th note. So I'm using my pencil tool by hitting the B button, and I'm just going to draw in one note and the next one right next to it. And then we're going to head over to the velocity. So I want to make sure that I'm accenting the first hi-hat. So let's click the velocity for that hi-hat and raise that up a little bit. And then we'll go to the second hi-hat, and we're going to just lower the velocity a little bit. So we have an accented hi-hat, and we have a hi-hat that's with a smaller amount of velocity. And what this is going to do is this is going to allow that one hi-hat to be a little bit louder in the velocity, more so accented. And then the next one won't be as accented, or would just be a little bit lower in the velocity. So we're going to copy these two, and we're simply going to duplicate it by hitting Command D. And now I've got, you can see here, this one's a little bit brighter in the blue color and darker. So we can copy that pattern once again and just highlight these two and just copy that over and over till we fill this up. And now we have a hi-hat pattern with one note, one hi-hat set to every 8th note. So let's listen to that. Now, not much has changed, so what we have to do is head over to the drum rack and to that specific hi-hat instrument. Next, you're going to hit the Control tab, and you're going to focus your attention over here where it says Velocity Volume. And so we're going to go ahead and dial this up and increase this percentage from 0 to, well, let's just try at maybe, let's max it and see what we get, 100. So what this is ultimately going to do is that depending on the velocity set for that note will determine the actual volume or the output of that volume. So let's solo the hi-hat. And you can hear the difference. Now we have the louder hi-hat in the brighter blue and the softer volume hi-hat in the darker blue. So that automatically gives it a lot more life than, let's say, back at 0%. So the volume is constant throughout all the different hi-hats. So maybe we find a good balance here. Maybe not 100%, but maybe somewhere around 33 or 40. This is a great way to give some life to those hi-hats that don't necessarily need to be stale by having the same volume all the way across. So remember, the higher the number, the more drastic it will be influenced by the velocity that you've written for those notes. And then what we're going to do is head over to the spread section and increase this percentage here so we can widen up the sound of that actual hi-hat. And then if you notice, right above the velocity volume, we also have a random pan. So this is a great way to actually give some movement to those hi-hats as well. So you can increase the percentage as well and give some nice movement to the hi-hat. And now you can hear how the hi-hat is bouncing from left to right randomly. And so this is a really cool. Now you can be really drastic about it. And you can go ahead and just gauge that by taste. It's your own personal preference. And then we can go ahead and shape the hi-hat by enabling the pitch envelope. And what I mean by shaping is that we can actually give it a little bit more texture and shaping the actual character of the hi-hat. So with the pitch envelope, what we can do is just by adjusting some of the parameters here, we can actually change the tone of the hi-hat. So I have the attack all the way up. And what this is doing is actually changing the pitch. So just really drastic at negative, you can hear what it's doing. It's actually pitching the sample up or down depending on where do you have the amount. We have a negative 13. So it's starting to pitch from, it's pitching it down negative 13 semitones. And this is the envelope shape of how it's going to, the character or the slope of that pitching. So let's not make it so drastic. How about around here? That's plus 10. Maybe just, let's turn it off and see what difference it makes. So just a little bit of that pitch envelope gives us some more character to the hi-hat. Now let's listen to it with the drums. So I'm going to lower the random panning a little bit. So there you go. So now let's talk about layering. So I want to go ahead and implement some layering to the snare drum that we have. So I'm just going to hit this hot swap key here. And the snare that I'm using currently is from the Beat Academy sample pack. So let's go ahead over to the one shots folder of the sample pack and browse through some sounds. Now I'm purposely looking for something that has more of a, maybe a percussion attack. So this one here, be good. So let's go ahead and just drag and drop that into an empty cell there. And what I'm going to do is go into our clip and select the whole row of the snare. So you can see the moving dotted line there, indicating that you're currently selecting all the notes that you've written in this clip for this one sound. So once they're all selected, holding the Option key allows me to just click that whole row and drag it to whichever of the sound I want to layer to. Right here. So now what I'm going to do is actually nudge it just a little bit back by holding the Command key so that it disables the grid. And then we've got that just slightly behind the snare. And let's see what the two samples sound like together. So open up the drum rack here, and we can kind of somewhat balance out the sounds. So we've got the sound way louder. And now double clicking the sound, and let's go ahead and do a little bit of pitching. So I'm going to pitch this up a little bit. And bring it up back. Now because this has that more of that percussion, I'll pitch it down a little bit. This is going to add a little bit more attack to, and even though the note itself is a little bit behind the first snare, it does have a little bit more of that that percussion presence in the initial attack of it. So it does make the snare feel like it has a little bit more attack. So it might not be the exact snare that you hear in the record, but I love this method of being able to layer sounds to come up with a unique texture to the overall sound itself. And I like the way it sounds. So that'll be it for the drums, and we're using a drum bus right after the drum rack, a little bit of drive, some crunch. I've taken some of the high end away by just decreasing the damp button and brought up the transients a little bit. And so this is without the drum bus. And then we go ahead and enable it. Now here's an additional tip that I often like to use. Now this is particular to an Ableton Live workflow. So let's say that you've created a pattern and you might want to use the same pattern with changing it every now and then, but maybe there's some intricate stuff that you've done in this pattern that you want to use continuously in other projects, especially if you're producing music in this vein a lot. Well, you can save this clip and use it in other projects by just simply clicking the clip and dragging that into a folder in your places. So I created a folder here called Beat Clips. So I'll use this to store any cool beats or anything, maybe any intricate patterns that I might be writing that I want to go to or revisit in other projects. So just simply click the clip and drag it into that folder. And once it's there, you can actually audition that by clicking it, and it'll audition it with the current drum rack that you have. So you can get an idea of what pattern it is that you've saved. You can simply just click and drag into your drum rack and the pattern will appear with all the velocity changes and everything that you made for that clip. So next, let's go ahead and add the 808. Now the 808 pattern is pretty straightforward. It's just following the chord progression that the guitars are doing in the chorus. So let's just take a listen. So I've created a instrument rack with an 808 sample loaded in there and a little bit of processing. And I've actually included this in an Ableton Live pack that you can download with this, using the same link below in the description box. That includes a sample pack as well as this 808 instrument that you can use as an instrument in your Ableton Live projects. So what we have though is the 808 sample running through an amp simulator to create some harmonic distortion, a little bit of compression, and then the EQ to eliminate a lot of that distortion high end, and then the compressor to sidechain. And if you want more information on how I create this, I do have earlier videos in my channel that walk you step by step through this 808 process. Now next is the main element that's the focal point of this overall song. It's the guitars that we hear at the very intro, as well as going on throughout the verses and in the chorus. So if you don't play guitar and you don't have anybody around that can play the guitar, it could be a little frustrating to find the right samples, to play at the right rhythm, and have the right tone and texture. So I found that using an instrument by Native Instruments called the Electric Sunburst has been a huge help in doing that. This is a plugin that can be used in the Contact Player and sounds amazing. So what I've done is I've actually played the pattern myself on the keyboard, and it will go ahead and play that pattern as if someone was actually strumming that on an electric guitar. So let's solo the guitars here. And it also plays it in the right proper inversions, and however you play it, it'll actually play it. And so you can determine the different patterns here too. So what's cool is that you can make small changes that really have a huge impact because you're making these subtle changes that someone would actually do if they were playing within the pattern themselves. So you can even play the pattern muted or have a whole nother pattern to begin with. And then you can also change some of the guitar settings. You can mess around with the bridge pickup to change the overall tone, as well as the neck pickup. You can also enable the mic, so it would sound, so you're not just getting the direct signal as if plugging directly into your interface, but you're also picking up as if you were miking the amp. So we'll leave that on because I like a lot of that. And then add some fret noise and increase the noise floor of how much of the amp noise is creeped in, and the actual tuning. You can be precise as if you just tuned it, or a little bit sloppy. So let's aim a little bit halfway and see what we get. Now I've gone into the amp section here, which allows me to use a little bit of the Native Instruments guitar rig settings that it already has built into it to emulate some of the amp settings here. So I can turn this off. And that's the guitar direct without any of the processing. So let's enable that. And I've just went in here and chosen one of the amp models that they have. And I've just lowered the gain a little bit. So it's not just complete crunchy, just a little bit of the crunch. With some EQ and some compression and even some tape saturation. And what's great here is that the playback can also allow you to add more of that human element to it, as if the quantizing isn't, it could be right on, or it can be a little bit sloppy. You can add some swing to it. You can also play it twice as fast, or twice as, half the time. So we'll leave it right here. Now, what really shapes this is that we hear a filter. We hear at the very beginning of the song that the guitar riff itself is being filtered out. So let's go to our audio effects folder, hit the auto filter, and just go ahead and take out some of that top end. Let's resonate that a little bit. And let's give it a little bit of reverb. So head over to the reverb, and I'm going to put the reverb before the actual auto filter. So let's go ahead and play that. A little less reverb. Now I noticed that there is probably like another lead part that's being played on top of that. So let's go ahead and create one using the analog. So let's go ahead and drag and drop an analog. And here's the pattern. All right, that's enough of that. And then let's go ahead and shape the tone. So let's go from sawtooth to a very smooth sine wave. And we're going to put both oscillators there as a sine wave. And filter out any of that high end. Really isn't that much high end present with the sine wave, but we'll just take a little bit off that. And what's important is that when you hit the volume section here in the analog, we want to make sure that we make this a mono lead so that the note doesn't linger or overlap each other when transitioning from one note to the next. Then let's go ahead and hit the glide so we have that nice smooth transition from that one note to the next. And then let's go ahead and add a little bit of the release here. So just a little bit of the sine wave and maybe just a unison so we can detune it a little bit. And now the big part of this is the reverb. So we can put the reverb directly on this, the pre-delay very soon, and just gauging the dry and wet. So let's go ahead and play this with everybody. You can add a little bit of delay here, and there you go. So thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful and inspiring in some way. And as my gift to you for watching, I'd love to send you the sample pack that I've mentioned earlier in this video with some of the sounds that we used in this project. Simply click the link below in the description box. Now this sample pack includes construction kits, loops, one-shots, transition effects that you can use in any DAW that you're currently using. Just simply drag and drop and you're ready to go. They're also 100% royalty free, so feel free to use them in any of your projects. As well, I'm including some vocal chains, some effects that you can use, and instruments that you can use in your Ableton Live projects. So once again, just click the link below to download this, or you can visit www.beatacademy.com/pack. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.